Was Doom a more focused version of Rage? Was Rage a way of seeing how far you could deviate from the gameplay base that ID Games is known for? Who knows? What I do know is that the game is hit and miss in my opinion. In one sense, I feel they did this because they wanted to pace things out. Also, I believe there was a desire to try out RPG and other game types in an attempt at world building. There was a desire to try this out and experiment, which was never a bad thing in my opinion. I personally don't mind it, but at the same time I think it deviated from the core gameplay. There are moments where I really liked the game because it felt like a true id game with its gunplay, but these were only a few moments within the game. Rage helped showcase the abilities of the new id tech game engine at the time. At first glance it's clear the engine produces a high level of graphic fidelity, which helps showcase the engine's new abilities. However, the look of the game in part owes to other factors. Rage is essentially a new IP for which they had to create a whole new world with characters, environments, etc. The art direction therefore did a good job in my opinion in terms of creating the look and feel of the post-apocalyptic future of Rage. The look of the game therefore owes in part to this art direction, but another factor was also the animation and all capture work done for the game. I noticed this the most when dealing with encounters with NPCs, mainly because you are face to face with them. This gives the ability to see the detail and smoothness of the animation, as well as the graphic fidelity, because you are focused more on one character at a time. But you notice this animation detail and how it helps in the gameplay when dealing with certain enemy types. Specifically, this occurs with the mutants in open areas where they will maneuver when approaching you for an attack. In this example, you can really appreciate the animation work and how it contributes to the gameplay or gunplay and the skill the player needs in terms of moving and shooting. This skill demand is enhanced further when dealing with a range of enemies, which leads to having to prioritize which enemy to take out first. This is most prominent when dealing with mutants combined with bosses or mini-bosses as I like to term it. It's when dealing with these situations that I really felt that I was playing an id game. An id tradition in my opinion by keeping the shooting fresh by creating variation in encounters, this also coupled with level design and movement. This aspect of the gameplay is not consistent because of game mechanic and level design choices that mimic cover shooters such as Gears of War, which became prominent during this time. Big arena type areas lend themselves to being able to move and shoot, while corridors lend themselves more to cover for enemies to go behind. This makes the shooting more static, which requires less skill because you are not forced to manage various things at the same time, such as movement and enemy prioritization, on top of checking ammunition and health levels. The weapons themselves offer enough variation in the traditional sense, such as shotgun, pistol, sniper, rocket, etc. Again, another id tradition in my opinion. The weapon ammo types are a way to innovate and expand the gameplay. Different ammo types are fun, but the interface for changing is clunky and takes too long, interfering with the pace of action. Also, whether or not the ammunition types make a difference is questionable. I would say that explosive ammo makes more of a noticeable difference than say other bullet types. I would say the gun add-ons and modifications have a bigger and less intrusive impact to the pace of action than the ammo types. This is because they add things such as stability when shooting and or increased ammo capacity. What worked best was the wind stick or grenade acting as a second fire mode. This was because it acted as an up-close weapon and a secondary weapon that could be quickly accessed, adding to the smoothness of the pace of action in my opinion. Another aspect that can be seen as affecting the shooting are the RPG elements. There are RPG elements that require the scavenging of enemies and locations for resources. This can be ammunition, bandages, but more often items that can be sold back in town for supplies, such as ammunition, bandages, gadgets, etc. The main purpose of scavenging is that you are collecting junk in order to sell back to the vendor for ammo, supplies and add-ons. This RPG element requires interacting, buying and selling. The main issue here is that you can stock up before a mission, which diminishes the need for management of resources in the middle of shooting. You can basically stock up and not worry about who you shoot with what. This removes the resource management of the shooting, that in my opinion is central to id shooters. Another aspect that gets in the way is the crafting of gadgets mid-game, which can take too long because of the clunky menu system for crafting. Having said that, there are some gadgets that add variation to tackling enemies, which I liked, such as the remote bomb, but this is only one out of many gadgets. The RPG aspect of the game here is in line with the world building that this game is trying to create. There are a number of ways that the game tries to immerse the player, such as interacting with NPCs for resources and missions. Travelling to various places, whether in town or elsewhere, offer the opportunity to interact with NPCs and carry out missions for them. This opens up new areas of the game with new environments, as it attempts to build up and immerse you in this world. For example, underground sewers as opposed to overground areas. Another example of this is the saloon in town, which offers the opportunity to interact and carry out missions for these characters as well as partaking in parlor games. The question here is, does this add to or get in the way of the shooting, or does it give pacing to the gameplay? That's up for debate, but to some degree it affects the amount of gunplay you have with the game. When it comes to racing and travelling, I was skeptical at first, but ended up not minding this aspect of the game and enjoying it. I think this aspect of the game worked for me because it was something very different, pacing the game out with the racing to buggy customization all the way to travelling to different areas and fighting in the Badlands. Because it was so different, I think it was unable to bleed into the shooting and affect it the way the RPG elements did, for example. Ultimately, there's a lot going on in this game, some good, some not so good. A lot of work went into this game, it seems, but ultimately a lot of energy was misplaced, particularly the amount of detail put in. The amount of detail and level of work that went into this game is truly outstanding. Even after 11 years, it amazes me the level of detail that went into the characters, detail of animation and graphic fidelity. This is a shame because I feel this hasn't been appreciated as much as it should be. It was also good in terms of atmosphere and world building, but then again, this is only one element within the overall package. One can't help but appreciate the fact that it essentially created a whole new IP here, and with it a new world away from the Doom and Quake franchises, and you have to appreciate that. But what I can also appreciate is the attempt to try out different things, to experiment. I feel this is important, if you will, in terms of propelling games in a time when the games industry is trying to get things completely right in a game and produce a hit. This can be explained in part because of the massive budgets that AAA games entail. Therefore, publishers are more risk adverse. You can also appreciate the gunplay in the game. When it works, it's fun and adheres to the classic gunplay that id Software is famous for. There are times when the gunplay really clicked, and when it did, it really felt like an id game of its own against the COD and cover type shooters of the time. But as it is with experimenting, there's also a risk of failure, and things not working. And this game suffers from this, trying out different things, which took too much focus away from the aspects of the gameplay that id Software is known for.